everyone, there's going to be Aptoid codes this weekend. Make sure you save and stream. And I think this is going to be a good topic for you all because a lot of you want to try and make all stars. And sometimes you go into it without a plan. And I'll have to say that the only time that I've ever made all stars is when I had a plan in place. And especially when there is a team that also supports you and knows what your plan is. So, the number one thing that I would say is to join C5 Discord. This is Anya's Discord. Seer does amazing, amazing work in this Discord. And you're going to want to join here because you can find your groupings in those categories. But the reason why, the main reason why you guys should join this Discord channel is that Seer collates all of the continents. She puts all of the continents together and makes a chart saying, this is the score you need each round. So, in order for her to do that, she takes the sum of each ranking each week and then puts it in these types of charts, which is freaking amazing, right? Like, let's give a round of applause to Seer for doing, you know, the Lord's work here. So, as you can see, top 400 is going to be majors, top 800 is going to be elite, top 1200 is going to be juniors. So you're going to want to see what is manageable for your team. Now, it's scary that C2 has way more points than C6, let's say, right? So your points that you need is going to be based off of your continent. So that could be good news or that could be bad news. I mean, I wish we could go back to C3. That would be my wish because it looks like they dipped down in points. But it's interesting that C4 is highly competitive. So it looks like C6 is kind of taking a while. I think C6 is 2 years old. So that's kind of nice that they're not up there yet. So the second step that you need to do is join my Discord channel. And of course, I have all those Aptoid promo codes, instructions. We have a lot of coining talk, what packs to buy. But here is the form that King Monkey made, and he is king of Excel sheets. That is what his name should be, is King Excel. So he pre-fills this out and puts in, this is for C2. So you can put that chart that I showed you, put it accordingly to your continent. So if you're C6, you can put like 32K points, right? You can change that week one up there. But he calculates it so that it will be auto calculated when you input your numbers. Now, what I love about this is that you can track your team together. So let's say I put my name in there and then, I could put big T's on the second line, monkeys on the third line, and we choose majors or we choose elite or we choose juniors. And then we input our first week's score. Then you go down the list here and you can see the remaining points you need and the remaining points you need per week. And then the total needed to get back to the minimum. So if I underscored, I would need to make more points the week after. So I always highly advise you guys to get as many points as possible, like even if you're going to lose, right? Because you're going to get 60% of those points, but what is the point of not getting enough points even if you lose, because you could have a chance to recoup that on the next week or the week after. So I will have to say that the good teams, the really good teams, know that this is the time to fight for points. This is the time where you might want to actually use your heals because you want to qualify, right? So let's look at the score that I got on the last qualifiers. So I got 88K points. So that puts me comfortably, comfortably in a position right now where this means that I need to score 56K points for the next 3 rounds. Now, give and take, you're going to have to give and take a little because you're going to have to check the rankings every single week because you don't know, like maybe some people on C2 take a bunch of steroids and and they make way more points than what we have estimated here, then you're going to have to update your tracker. So every week that the points come out, you're going to want to look at the new average and then update your tracker. So with All Stars, what I will say is you have to look out for your own points. Now, this is still a team effort. Your team can still help push each other. Maybe, one person that is running behind on points gets all the buildings, right? You can allocate that type of stuff. However, you are responsible for making enough points or making the point goal by looking at your points, right? Putting in the tracker and making sure that every battlefield you're going to meet that quota. And if you don't, you need to speak up and say something. And usually someone will say, "Hey, I need 20K more points." And people will know, you know what? Okay, get those buildings, get this here. You know what? You take the mine, you get the personal heal if it comes, right? Those are the types of things that can be coordinated out as long as the you guys are in a like a winning position. I mean, the first goal is to win, right? When you're playing All Stars, the first goal is to win because you don't want people to lose out on 40% of their points. So the first goal is to win, and then the second is to make sure that people are hitting their quotas. Now, even if you are losing, just keep making points because again, if you're only going to get 60% of the points and you lose, you want to get as many points as possible. Now, sometimes you might be in one of those really tough positions where you're against a really tough opponent and both of you really want to win. But in order for you both to win, you guys can't make points, right? You guys can't rally each other because you know that it's going to be point negative. And that's also problematic because if you're only making, 200K points and they're making 250K points, your team loses out. All of you lose out except for the top two or three people that make 50 to 60K points, right? So your rest of the team loses out when you're playing for very little points. So I would say, I don't know, in those situations, I would just go all out and just keep rallying each other, even if you know that maybe you're going to lose because, you know, only getting 10K points each person, right? That is going to be so, so hard for you guys to make up on week 2, 3, and 4. Now, hopefully you all are good with your matchups. Make sure, like the biggest, most important thing is make sure when you're signing up that you're signing up everyone who's actually going to show up. Make sure you're signing up the power that is going to be there because if you sign up somebody that doesn't show up, you're going to be playing a tier or two higher than the sign up power that you have. Another thing that, people do is people split up. They go to different alliances to make sure that your fighting power is not too high. So this is something that you should be thinking about all the time, though, is your sign up power versus the power on your team. So if you're a rally leader and you're more than 20% of the total sign up power, you're doing a disservice to your team. You're basically putting your team in the next league up, and they're not going to be able to handle the competition. And then you're going to be upset because you're losing all the time because you're being selfish by, growing a bunch of troops that your rest of the team doesn't have yet. So I think a lot of us know that putting the buildings and growing your buildings is more important, your buildings and your buffs before building up a lot of troop power. But I do understand why people need to build up troop power, especially now, because how can you take defenses against 125 million rallies, right? But you have to make sure that those people building troops have the buffs to sustain those rallies and are building correctly, right? So if they're building a bunch of top heavy troops, they're just going to be giving up points, right? Or if you have a 8 billion, 9 billion power player that is a one tap, rally and they never jump out of the way, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions and be like, you know what? You can't play, until you improve, like until you start teleporting out, until you start taking buildings, you really need to make sure that you don't have certain players also bringing your team down, because that then also affects the rest of your team, right? If somebody is a point pinata and giving up a bunch of points, that 10 billion points or 10 million points or whatever it is could be the difference between a win and a lose. So those are just all things that you have to think about. And as a rally leader, it's nice that, you have the capability of being very powerful and big, but you just have to remember, do you want to go to that next bracket? Because if you go to that next bracket, don't blame your effing team. Don't blame your team on your losses because you chose to be kind of stupid and greedy and selfish and build up too big, because you're responsible. You're responsible for going up to that next bracket. Now, obviously, you need to make sure that everybody is responsible for how they're building and making sure that nobody's building too many troops for their build. But again, it's just one of those things that it's a team effort and it's something that you all have to talk about. And if you're not talking about it and you're not, explaining to people why this is important, everyone's just going to do whatever the fuck they want. And then you're going to end up with a team that's like all out of whack and balance. So just preventative, just planning, just, all these kinds of things that you can do can really help create a really good team that is going to get a lot of people into All Stars. And as I have seen it, it's been much harder to get individuals into All Stars with how all of the game has changed. And when you have, we used to have 3 spenders that were very similar in spend. We don't have that anymore. And when we had the 3 biggest keeps, they were 45 billion, 50 billion, and I think 30 billion, right? Those were the highest level of keeps that we had. So our matchups were always very, I don't want to say easy because I don't want to like put down anybody that we've been up against because we've had really good competition. But when we had a smaller team and a smaller sign up power, we definitely had a lot easier type of matches for us to win. And so now we're kind of on the cusp of, we kind of, bobble back and forth depending on, who we have that signs up. So it's all things that you just need to think about as a team. And when you know these types of things and you build your team this way, this is how you're going to have longevity in the game because people like to win. People like to be winners, and people don't want to hear, oh, we need to get more traps or we need to get more 1 billion players. And it's like, no, we actually need to develop our depth. We need to develop our 45s. We need to develop more, march capacity. Like there are certain things that people just are so oblivious and they don't understand. They don't understand the game and their stupidity really makes a lot of us mad. But you have to basically learn to live with some of that stupidity in order to just like keep it a game, right? So it's like sometimes you got to be like, you know what? I'm just going to have fun and I'm not going to like worry about, people's stupidity too much as long as it doesn't affect, you know, most of our games, right? But sometimes that stupidity actually ends up affecting a lot of people's games in a negative way because the importance is not going on what is actually realistic. And this is where I would say that people should understand where the coiners come into play and why they are so important to the rest of the team. Because if you don't have the coiners playing in these battlefields, you would not have a lot of red subs going out to people. You would not be winning a lot of these matches. You would not have people that are, 12 billion power going to majors, right? You need to have those coiners and you need to have those upper levels and making sure that they have the biggest march capacities that they can possibly have. And then your next tier down, and then your next tier down, and then your next tier down. It doesn't make any sense to prioritize 1 billion players. And I'm not trying to put down a lot of you guys that are only 1 billion players because we have amazing building players, freaking lots of amazing building players that are below, 1 billion or 4 billion. They are so essential to our team. But what I'm talking about is just having people just to sign them up that don't play these essential roles just so that they can join a couple of rallies before they get zeroed and they don't know how to jump out of the way or anything like that. It's just it's not helpful to the team. What's helpful to the team is making sure that your big players are getting their 45s and their march capacities expanded. What matters is your middle players are getting to 44. What matters is that, your 39s are getting to 40. Those are the things that matter. So I just I just think that, like, making sure you have at least 25 Battlefield players, right? Because sometimes people are sick, sometimes people have work, people have real life, they can't play. Making sure you have 25 people that can play Battlefields. What does that mean? Making sure that, recruiting from other places, recruiting from other people on your server, training people, to come in on your server. What does this mean? Sometimes it means you need to get rid of the 600 million power players that have just been, never active, never talk, just kind of get this free ride from you guys. Sometimes you have to assess, what? This is not helping our alliance having these players in here when we're a Battlefield team. This is actually a better slot that can go to somebody who's a keep 40 that can actually join the battlefields, right? So, like, there's just so many things that you can think about to make your team better. And when people are sitting there acting like everybody sucks because, we don't have enough traps or whatever. No, dude. No. And sometimes when you have to deal with that stupidity, you just got to deal with that stupidity. And like, I remember what I said in the very beginning of this game or this beginning of this video, you got to look out for your own points because you're going to have really effing stupid people sometimes that you got to deal with. And sometimes you got to be like, you know what? I just need to make my points and just make all stars, right? Like you don't you don't want to deal with them. You just got to make your points. And that's that. And I hate to be like that because you really should be it should be fun. It should be a team effort. It should be like, you know, pushing each other. It should be a bonding experience, to help each other get into All-Stars, but I have just been in this community for so long, and I have heard so many stories, and while I would love, everyone to have an ideal experience and an ideal alliance, it's just not the case. That's why having, top alliances come far and few because not every server understands how a Battlefield team should be run, and sometimes when you get new people recruited in, they don't understand and they just they don't understand until it actually impacts them. And the moment that it impacts them, it's like, dude, you should have done that a year ago, right? Like we told you that a year ago. And now you're only feeling it now because you see the impact of it. So I personally don't have the patience for that. Like, if you're gonna come to Val, you need to have that mindset of this is how a Battlefield team runs. We don't have, free to play players that are freaking running Val. We don't have them as R5. I mean, we do have some free to play players that are in that position, but they earned it. They had tenure here. That, there's like different scenarios, but there's just really problematic situations where you have an alliance that is supposed to be a Battlefield team that a lot of other people have different ideas of how it should be run. And it's really, really wrong when you have a server that thinks that, a 39 keep that's 2 billion power that thinks that they're in charge of the server. That is so backwards and wrong that I can't even this is like a whole different video that I have to make. But the truth of the matter is that you got to get rid of that bullshit. And if you want to be a Battlefield team, you got to have one main alliance. You need to get all of your best players in that alliance and you need to, get rid of, the 600 million casual players. Again, like I don't want to be a hard ass on things, but you're investing. Like, you have a team that's either investing time and money for the battlefields. And if you have people in there that are not doing anything, that could be one space that could be for a family member, that could be for another player that will actually compete, or somebody that's actually willing to train or willing to coin into, the next level. So, those are basically all of the tips that I have. I hope this helps. I hope the forum helps. I'm sorry that I'm going on in this rant, but it's just all those things that I like wish that I could just tell people so that people can really think about it. Like, before you go down the wrong path of, doing like a lot of bad things where, you implode your alliance or people just don't want to play anymore and people quit. Like, really make sure that you have people that are coming together that align on how a server and alliance should be run for a battlefield team. That's different than, you know, other places. And I'll have to say that when you have really huge, huge, huge spenders, it's actually obviously easier for you to, you know, have more generosity, right? Because when you have those huge, huge spenders that carry the rest of the team, it doesn't matter so much, right? It doesn't matter so much because everybody's kind of riding the eggplant or the taco, right? Everybody's riding a free ride because you got like major, major spenders that are kind of like pushing everybody. But when you don't have that situation, when you don't have that free ride, right? That means that everybody has to buckle down and everybody actually has to, you know, contribute. And that means hard decisions and how you run things because now you need more resources because before it didn't matter because all the stuff got trickled down to everybody. But now, like, we have to be scrappy and we have to work for it. So those things will change. Those things will change as, people change, as alliance changes, as servers change, as continents change, right? The fact that we got to push down to C2 was a huge wake-up call for us, right? Like, definitely a huge wake-up call. I mean, we are fighting people that have 5, 6, 7, 8 45s. We only have 3 45s on our team. One is a newly 45, and I don't even know if all of them have T16 yet. I have no idea. So, you know, that has been something that has been difficult for us to kind of maneuver, but for the fact that we only have 3 45s on our team, we've actually done pretty darn well. So, I know that me, Monkey, Big T, Scylla, PQ, we're all on track to get to 45, but, it does take a while. I think I'm about 6 buildings away from 45, and it does not get any easier every week. Like, it just, it doesn't get any easier. So, anyways, I hope you guys got something out of my long, long rambling. But if anything, I hope you guys get help from that tracker. So make sure you join my Discord to get that tracker. Thank Mr. Monkey for putting that together. It is so super helpful. Having a visual helps. And hopefully you can help push, more of your alliance members. I always think that having that visual and just having something to work towards is a motivator. It's much more motivating for your team as well. And it helps them stay realistic. So you don't have those people that are only making like 10K points and want to get pushed to majors and it's just like it's not going to be possible, right? So at least you have what's realistic there as well. So I don't know why I'm showing you all of these prizes, but I will say this. A couple of these castles are okay to get, but the red chests, even though they're not as like the red chest is kind of boring because obviously like a castle's more fun because it's a skin. But the red chest is going to give you the duty generals that are going to give you a lot more buffs than anything really on here, except for maybe the dragon eggs if you don't have one of those dragons already. But if you're deciding between a red chest and a castle, one duty officer in that red chest is probably going to give you like 50, 60 60%, maybe even more when you add the specialties on it. It's gonna give you a lot more buffs than those castles will. So, I'm just saving my galaxy coins, hoping that Evony will one day put the elder dragon, eggs in there. Like, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping. But, yeah, we'll see. I'm just gonna hoard those coins and see what happens, because I have enough of those red chests, so I don't need to get those red chests right now. Alright, guys, good luck in all of the qualifiers, and make sure you're using Aptoid code ROYAL this weekend. Have a good one.